Agriculture. The chapter 4 we are going to deal about agriculture. We all know that in India we have 70% of the population depending on agriculture, which is nearly 3/4 of the entire population depends completely on agriculture. India has been a agriculture dominated country for the past many centuries, because in India we have nearly 6.4 lakh villages which are accommodating nearly 80% of the entire India's population is situated there. So the basic occupation for most of the people in India is agriculture. It is not only in the new generations but in the older generations also. Way back in the ancient period also, many of the Indian lands are having the experience of being agriculture practiced. Even if you see the ancient civilizations or ancient cultures, whenever we refer to any period of any king, most of the kings have contributed for the development of agriculture and to improve the facilities of irrigation, which means that during that period also we have the agriculture practice in existence from the ancient period to modern period. So the India is a land of agriculture where agriculture has been practiced from many centuries and people have a habit of doing agriculture from hundreds of years. So many generations of people are passing on their lives by doing agriculture. In India, nearly 70% of the entire land, the most fertile land, comes under the category of agricultural land, because where there is availability of water, there people would like to do more agriculture. Agriculture is possible only when there is availability of water. In case if there are not availability of water is present or the availability of water is difficult, then they depend on the rainfalls. If the rainfalls are sufficient enough, then they would further proceed to have agriculture there. Even if rainfall is not sufficient, then they would depend on the underground water layers, that is to have bore wells or drip irrigation or tank irrigation like that. But whatever it is, the source of the water, the main occupation of the people in India is agriculture. Today in this unit, we shall discuss about the different forms and the patterns of agriculture and what are the various crops that are grown in different parts of India, and later we would like to conclude what is the best way of utilization of the land. So let us move on to understand what are the different patterns of agriculture. The types of farming. Now we shall discuss about the different types of farming. We all know that from ancient period to modern period, the development of technology has also impacted different changes in the practice of agriculture also. Earlier, they used to use the tools which are made of wood. Later, they started to use with the made of metals, and now they are using machinery to do agriculture. So the stage of transition from the wooden tools to machinery has brought a lot of changes in the agricultural patterns. Let us see the different categories of farming systems which are in existence from the ancient period to the modern period. The different types of farming systems are: the first one, the farming can be categorized into three major categories till date. First one is primitive farming. The next one comes as intense subsistence farming, while the third category comes under commercial farming. So the primitive farming, the intensive subsistence farming, the commercial farming, these are the three major types of farming which we find in the modern days. Now let us try to find out what is a primitive farming. Primitive farming is the farming used by ancient people This type of farming was actually practiced by ancient people, or before we have any kind of modern technology got impacted or improved in the lives of the human beings. They used to use the things or utensils like foi, hoe, dao and digging stick, so these all are made with wood, which the primitive people, when man was in a situation where he used to shift from one place to the other place. Earlier, we all know that man had a primitive lifestyle where the civilization was not up to the modern days understanding. Today, we are well dressed, well groomed ourselves, and we started to utilize the technology also on a larger scale according to the requirements of the human beings, and made our life more comfortable and more flexible for us with more amount of luxuries available for mankind. But prior to this, man always used to move from one place to another place, shifting from one region to another region. During that period of time, maybe around some 1st century to 2nd century BC period, or far way back than that, man used to follow the primitive agricultural practice system. In this system, he used to select a patch of land of forest, which he used to clear that one. After clearing that forest, then he used to do the agriculture on that particular patch which he has selected and cleared for doing agriculture. After selecting the land, clearing the patch by removing all the forest trees and all, and making it onto the agricultural land, afterwards he does agriculture for 3 years or 4 years. After a certain period of time, he can recognize that the fertility of the soil comes down day by day. This we can come to know with the output what he is getting from the field. So once when he gets the idea that in the primitive agriculture that the fertility of the land is coming down, then basing on the output what he is getting for the product, for example rice, if rice has been as a crop for him, when the rice crop has been coming its output, earlier if he used to get 100 bags, the next year he may get only 80 bags, the very next year he may fall down to 70 bags. So this kind of rapid fall down will indicate to him that the fertility of the land is being falling down. So this indication he would take as a call, and he leaves that land and he selects a new patch of land, and there again he does the agriculture, same pattern what he has done with the previous system of clearing the land, then again doing agriculture. Again after certain years like 3 years or 5 years, again he finds that the fertility of the land is coming down, again he leaves that land and moves on to the other land. So in this process, this movement of the man has been compulsory after a certain period of time. That's why this type of cultivation or practice is known as primitive cultivation or shifting cultivation, because it has become a habit of a man who does agriculture has to shift after a certain period of time. This shifting of agriculture made him to become as a shifting person. So this type of agriculture is known as shifting agriculture or jumming agriculture. This shifting or jumming agriculture resulted in the low levels of the fertility of the land to come down. Why the fertility of the land is coming down? Why the land which produced more amount of output in the initial years is not giving the same amount of output in the next years? Because man does not use any kind of fertilizers which are added to it in the modern day to get more amount of output. Today we add many fertilizers and many chemicals to get more amount of output what we require. But during those days, he don't know what are fertilizers, he don't know what are pesticides, he just naturally gives the seeds and then does the hard work, and he expects the land to grow the crop and get him the required output. He does not add any artificial pesticides or fertilizers to increase the output margin what he is getting. So this has made the land day by day to degrade its fertility, because day by day the crop has been used and the crops are squeezing the fertility levels of the lands. So slowly it loses its fertility capacity. That is the reason why it is compulsory for the people in the primitive time to shift from one place to the other place. This is primitive farming. Now we shall discuss about the intensive farming. As we discussed about the primitive farming, the primitive farming also gives a natural healing to the land, because after a certain period of time, automatically the farmer is shifting from this land to the other land, which automatically leaves this land to nature to replenish this particular land, and again it brings it into good position while he can use the other land. After a certain period of changing, again he can return back to this land and he can continue the agriculture. This type of farming is actually practiced in the regions of India like northeastern states, Manipur, Mizoram, Assam, and also in Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. Now moving on to the second category of farming, that is intensive subsistence farming. Intensive subsistence farming. The name itself reveals for us here, it is intensive in nature. When we talk about intensive, which is very close, they take a very close approach towards the crop in order to derive the maximum output that is possible to get from the crop. So, to get the maximum output, automatically, as I told you before, to get the maximum output, we need to give some external additional help to the crop so that it can flourish more and get the extra output for us. That is called biochemicals. So, biochemicals are given in high amount, are used in the high amount, and also they used to give more preference to irrigation facilities to improve. So, once they started to give more amount of biological chemicals into the crop to generate it to give to the seed and generate it into larger tree or a crop, and later where there is a scarcity of water, they started to concentrate more on giving irrigation facilities, and also to adding on to this one, because nowadays we all know that in India we have the average land holding of people coming very less, because 60% of the people hold less than 1 to 1.5 hectare of land under them, and that too because of this right of inheritance. Because of the right of inheritance, in India, we got the situation where 60 to 70% of the people, those who are actually working in the agriculture lands, do not own more than 1.5 to 1.7 hectares of land. That too, if an individual gets 1.5% as 1.5 hectares as a share of him, and if he is having 2 children, automatically that 1.5 hectare of land will be again divided into 0.75 hectare. And if this 0.75 hectare a person gets, a family, again after his marriage, if he gets 2 children, again this will be redivided into 0.35% of the hectare. So like this, the division of the land has been happening because of the growth of the population, and also because of the equal rights or equal division of the property according to the right of inheritance made the land availability to very less under every individual. At the same time, they are also trying the maximum levels to get the maximum output from the limited amount of land what they had, but they want to extract the maximum output for the crop what they are having. This type of cultivation is known as intensive subsistence farming. In the intensive subsistence farming, they do very close study on the crop, on the land, to how to maximize the output what the crop they have put into the land. So they use high amount of biochemicals, they increase or improve the irrigation facilities, and they try their maximum level to get the maximum output from the limited land because of the right to inheritance. In India, we have the division of the land happening rapidly and very fastly because of the growth of the population. Even though the average land holding is less than 1 hectare to 1.5 hectares also, people, the farmers are trying their level best to derive the maximum output from this crop what they are having. Now, moving on to the third major category of farming, that is the commercial farming. The commercial farming, the name itself, it reveals for us that here the concentration on the farming is done more explicitly to earn huge profits, to be commercially successful. We generally have movies coming on like commercial lines. In the same way, farming also has adopted the commercial style in order to earn huge profits. So, in order to earn huge profits, many researches have been done and then they brought the HYV seeds. What are these HYV seeds? The HYV seeds are high yielding variety seeds. So, the HYV stands for high yielding variety seeds. So, when the high yielding variety seeds are sown in the soil, that would automatically get a huge profitable extent of crop growth for them. That is the promise what we get from the high yielding variety of crops. And they also use the maximum facilities like improving agriculture, using more pesticides, more fertilizers to increase the productivity, and they try to do the maximum utilization. And most of the times we see the commercial cropping happening through plantations. What are plantations? The plantations are a large piece of land taken to cultivate only one particular crop. Like for example, take tea estates where only tea crop has been cultivated. Banana estates, only banana crop will be cultivated. In that way, they do cultivation only for a particular single crop, that is called plantation on a very large scale. This plantation concept has been actually brought into India by the Britishers. When the Britishers saw towards the good fertile land available in India, they did the teak plantations. These teak plantations, they required the sandalwood and the teak wood to produce most durable boats and ships for them to travel from India to their own motherland. So, as per their requirement of that particular time, they did large plantations on this, and also they had cotton plantations, tea plantations, which were actually brought into Indian culture by the Britishers. So, they have made a significant contribution to the agriculture also, bringing a particular type of farming known to the Indians. So, we have the high yielding variety of seeds giving more amount of output. Then moving on to plantations. These plantations are mostly grown in the states like Assam, then Karnataka, Haryana and Punjab. So, all these plantations do a very larger scale of commercial farming, which has been resulted to be more profitable in various states like in Assam, like in Haryana, in Punjab, and also in the southern state of Karnataka, Kerala. We have the rubber plantations. All these things give us a picture of how the agriculture from the initial stage where it was in the primitive farming stage, it reached to the most advanced level of cultivation called commercial farming. So, these are the different types of patterns of farming what we have in agriculture. The first type of farming what we discussed earlier was the primitive type of farming. It is also known as slash and burn farming or shifting cultivation. In this primitive farming, the farmer used to clear a patch of land and does the agriculture there for a certain period of time, and later after he found that the fertility of the soil is coming down, then he realizes and he leaves that place dry and moves on to the next place where he can start a new cultivation there, where the fertility of the land is much better than the previous land. That is the primitive agriculture. This kind of agriculture was in practice in India from many centuries. This has now also been found in some parts of India like northeastern states. The next major form of farming what we have in India is the intensive subsistence farming. The intense means very close approach, very clear approach. The maximum output is the main target of the people, those who are doing this intensive subsistence farming. The biochemicals are used in high amount to get the maximum productivity outside, and they concentrate more on the irrigation facilities improvement to get the maximum output. At the same time, we have the commercial cropping, the third major farming system in India, where here they use the main seed itself with a high yielding variety of seed, so that the base itself is very strong. Along with this, to add for that, they add more fertilizers, more chemicals to make the seed to produce in a very large output product for them, so that they can acquire more profits. And this has turned into plantations which were actually brought into India by the Britishers during their ruling period. Now also we are following this one in some of the states like Assam, Karnataka, Haryana and Punjab. So where we have the tea estates, coffee estates, large plantations of the rubber plantations, timber plantations, all these things are the different categories of the cropping patterns what we are following in our country till date. Now we shall discuss about the different crop seasons in India. What is a crop season? A crop season is a season of classification of the time of the period when a particular crops are grown, basing on the climatic conditions and basing on the crops which are grown during that particular period. Generally, in India, we have three major crop seasons. One is Kharif, while the second one is Rabi. We have Kharif and Rabi cropping systems or seasons. Between the Kharif and the Rabi time, we have the shortest season called Zayad. This is the third major crop season. So, total we have three major crop seasons in India according to the India's climatic condition. So, when it comes to Kharif and Rabi, these are the main time period when the actual cropping pattern grows in India. In the break time of Kharif and Rabi, we have the Zayad crops being growing. Now let us first discuss about Rabi crop. Rabi crop starts from the month of October to December, and they will be collecting the crop output from April to June. So the process of putting the crop starts after October till the December, and they would be getting the crop into hand from April to June. So the major cropping pattern what happens in this Rabi season is major crop is wheat, then the next crop is barley, oats, all these grams, pulses come under the category of the Rabi period croppings. We all know that there is a lot of difference between the crop seasons. Why do we need to bifurcate or differentiate the cropping seasons? Because in Rabi only a particular kind of crops can be grown, or during this time period of from October to December, we all know that in North India or in South India you don't experience much of the hot temperatures during this tenure. It is only from the month of March to September you experience hot climatic conditions, especially in the month of May you experience hot climatic conditions in North India or in South India. So basing on the climatic conditions only the seasons of the crops are bifurcated. So during the period of October to December the average temperature on the Indian land will not increase more than 25 degrees. That is the best suitable time for the growth of wheat. That's why wheat is extensively grown during the Rabi season. It has been grown in almost all north states and it produces in a large amount of wheat for us. Prior to 1960, the production was not very high. It was not satisfactory according to the required levels of the Indian population. It was having very limited output, though it has been produced in large lakhs of hectares of land. But in 1960, with the efforts of M.S. Swaminathan, the Green Revolution has been implemented. With the implementation of the Green Revolution, in this Green Revolution, there are three major steps that have been focused clearly. Three major steps are: first, HYV seeds, irrigation facilities, and the third one is pesticides. So, the high yielding variety of the seeds are brought into the market and the irrigation facilities are been improved. Later, pesticides, the amount of pesticides which are used on the crop has been increased to produce a maximum output using the Green Revolution technology, and with this we got a rapid increase of production. Prior to this, the land which was brought under cultivation was around some 30 to 40 million. It increased nearly 4-fold times into 140 million, where the production has been tripled than the prior production. This has brought a revolutionary change in the agricultural field. So, Green Revolution has brought the productivity to the maximum levels with the implementation of the technology and modern means into the agriculture. From then onwards, we have never seen any kind of drawbacks coming for agriculture in regards to the wheat and barley. In 1960, 61, 62, year by year, a trial basis it has been used, first on wheat, then on the pulses, then on the rice, paddy, and all these crops started to get the impact of the Green Revolution. Now moving on to the second category of cropping period, that is Kharif. During the Kharif crop period, we have the special crop called paddy. It has been also been grown in many parts of India, North India and South India. As I told you prior to this Kharif season starts after the Rabi season's period gets to an over, and then between the period of Rabi and Kharif, we have the time period of April to July, where we have the Zayad period. It is a break period. It is a break period. These are the major cropping seasons. Here paddy is produced during this Kharif season. The specialty of the Kharif season is, for the production of paddy, we need high amount of heavy temperatures and huge amount of water. So, after the rainy season starts in India, after the monsoons, you get the underground layers filled with water and we have temperatures average above than 30 degrees Celsius. So, that is the two factors which are contributing for the growth of paddy during the time of the Kharif season. That is the reason why we are able to produce paddy more in the entire world. India is standing in the second position in the production of the paddy only after China, because China land also is available more for them, so they were able to produce more in amount. And when it comes to the production, India stands only at the second place in the production of the paddy, which shows that in India, in almost major northern states and major southern states, we produce paddy on a very, very large scale. North and southern states. Now moving on to Zayad. During this period or the break period between the Rabi and the Kharif, or Kharif and the Rabi seasons, what are the major crops that have been produced? We all know major vegetables, watermelon, muskmelon, cucumber, fruits. These are the major crops that are being produced during this break period in the same fields, in the same land during the tenure of the Zayat period. So, it has been a contributing factor to the farmer. He can produce 3 crops if the land is very fertile and if he is having the availability of water. Definitely he can produce 3 crops in the same field. Some crops may not support for more than 2, but in India, fortunately, we have many lakhs of hectares where they can contribute for continuous production because of the fertile lands available for us near the Indo-Gangetic plain, the Ganga plateau plain, or the Krishna Godavari region belt, where we have the soil being more and more fertile, and the delta parts especially of these rivers contribute for this kind of 3 crops in the same year, where there many farmers are fortunate enough to use this capacity of the land. Now, let's have a brief recap of this one. We have 3 major crop seasons of agriculture in India: Kharif, Rabi and Zaid. In Kharif, the major crop which is produced is paddy. India stands second in the production of rice or paddy after only China. And India produces a large amount of paddy by producing in northern and the southern states, equally important. Rice has been a staple food for all the maximum population of India in South India, and also it has been taken as a additional food in North India. So, rice is a most important food item in all our Indian menus. Moving on to the second major crop season, that is Rabi season. Rabi season starts from October to December, where the initial process of cropping does, and they get the output, or the harvesting season starts from April to June. The major crop which has been produced during this period is the wheat, the next is barley, and the next is oats. With the implementation of the green revolution technologies like high yielding variety of seeds, irrigation facilities improvement, and using pesticides to eradicate all the unnecessary diseases which are hurting the growth of the crop, has brought a revolutionary change in India in regards to the production of agriculture. In the break period, or in the time gap between the Rabi and the Rabi and the Kharif, we have the period called Zaid period. In this Zaid period, that is called break period, where they produce vegetables, watermelon, muskmelon, cucumber and fruits, etc., which are for a short period of time from 45 days to 90 days, where it gives a change for the land also to produce. And in India, we have fortunately many lakhs of hectares which can be used for 3 crop seasons in the same year. That's how India has been very, very fortunate, and these are the major crop seasons in India. Now we shall move on to discuss the major crops. What are the major crops in India? Just now we were discussing about the major crop seasons in India. In that we have already discussed that in India we have 3 major crop seasons: Kharif, Rabi and Zaid. So, according to the climatic conditions which are suitable, only that particular crops can be grown during a particular crop period. So, now let us see here the major crops. We can understand very simply that the crops which come under the major crops in India are rice, wheat, barley, millets, pulses, sugarcane, tea, etc. Like this, we have various variety of crops which are grown in India. Again, further, we can classify the crops into food crops, cereal crops, then the other non-food crops, commercial food crops, non-commercial food crops. Like this, we have various bifurcations. Let us first learn about rice. Rice being a major crop for most of the people in India, because nearly 70 to 75% of the Indians have this as a common food in their daily menu. That's why this is called cereals of the crop or cereal crop, as it is consumed by most of the people. And the conditions which are required for this are the rainfall should be nearly more than 100 centimeters annually. Means it requires huge amount of water and also high humid temperature. The temperature also should be greater than 25 degrees. Then only this rice production is possible in the lands of India. Fortunately, India receives heavy amount of rainfalls as well as heavy high temperatures, which makes the temperature also to be highly humid. That is the reason why India is able to produce huge amount of rice production from the crop of paddy. India stands second in the production of rice only after China. And later, when we move on to the next crop, what we have is wheat. For the production of wheat also, we are producing in a large number, and wheat stands in the second place in the major crops list of cereals which are grown in India. In the second place, because it doesn't require this much amount of rainfall what is required for rice. It requires an average rainfall of 50 to 75 centimeters annually. And it is temperature can be less than or equal to 20 to 25 degrees of Celsius would also be favorable conditions for the production of wheat. So rice is produced in the states of northern and southern states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Karnataka and Punjab, Haryana states, wherein wheat is also produced in northern states as well as in the southern states of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh and all the states. Only very few states in south do not produce wheat, but still we are producing in large amount of wheat because wheat is also consumed as a staple food in many parts of North India and also in some parts of South India. And moving on to the third major crop which is produced in India is millets. Millets are being produced in very huge amount in India. They are called as coarse grains. They are called as coarse grains. These coarse grains are produced in large number in India in order to fulfill the basic requirements for India. What are the grains that are coming under the millets? Jowar, Bajra and Ragi come under the category of these coarse grains. These coarse grains are really very rich in the production. They have iron plus calcium, which is preferred for almost all categories of people. So that makes them to get more requirement and alignment their attitude of food towards the millets. So we need rice because it is a staple food for most of the people in South India and few places in North India. Wheat, staple food in North India, few parts in South India. Millets, coarse grains, jowar, bajra, ragi, all common which have huge amounts of iron and calcium present in their grains. So this is required for all people to develop their bones, to develop their capacity, to build their strength and all. So they prefer to have millets in their day-to-day food habits. And next we have the crop, major crop is maize. Maize is the only crop which is used as a food and the fodder crop in India. Maize is the only best crop which requires the temperature averaging from 21 to 27 degrees Celsius, and most of the time it doesn't depend on water supply at all. It is rain fed. It depends only on the rains. So even in production of maize also, India is not ranking below than any other country. We are able to produce maize also in large amount as per our requirement. And then moving on to the last but not the least, pulses. Pulses are also called as the leguminous trees or leguminous crops, because in pulses we have various kind of urads, tar, dal, then we have moong, piyas, all the various kinds of dals, various kind of murags, blue dal, black dal, all these Bengal gram, all these grams also come under the pulses. These pulses are especially grown on the lands in order to restore and build the fertility of the lands. How is it possible to do cultivation and rebuild the infertility of the land? How can we increase the fertility of the land? That is possible only by pulses crops, because that is the reason why it is also known as leguminous crop. In this pulses, in the seeds they have a capacity to restore nitrogen back to ground. So in the field crop, when you are using the pulses crop, it restores the nitrogen which is in the air to get back into the land, and then when nitrogen is going into deeper into the lands, the land becomes more and more fertile and gives more and more output for it. So once you put a pulse crop there, then automatically the fertility of the soil will increase. That is the extraordinary benefit what you are getting with the production and with the larger kind of profits what you get when you use the production of pulses. That is the reason why it is known as leguminous crop. So these are the major crops in India what are grown. First one is rice. The rice crop is the most favorite cereal crop in India. For 70% of the Indians consume rice as their basic staple food. It requires rainfall of more than 100 centimeters per annum, and it requires high humid temperatures, more than 25 degrees. Wheat stands second in the major crops of India in the cereals. 50 to 75 centimeters is the average rainfall required for the having wheat crop to be grown, and temperatures may be varying from 20 to 25 degrees. The rice and the wheat are the larger crops which are produced in India in many states of North and South India. Millets are coming under the category of the coarse grains, where we have the production of jowar, bajra and ragi. Here, jowar, bajra and ragi are highly rich in production of iron and calcium, which is very much important and required for all the human bodies to develop and to have stable strength and stamina in their bodies. That's why most of the Indians would like to prefer, along with their regular cereal crops, would like to add these coarse grains in their regular menu. And now moving on to the maize. Maize is the only crop in India which is considered as a food as well as the fodder crop. For this, it is mostly rain fed, it doesn't require much water, and also temperatures from 21 to 27 degrees is an average temperature in the entire Indian subcontinent. And moving on to the last but not the least, the pulses. The pulses are also known as leguminous crops because they have a special feature. But before knowing about the special feature, it has the urad dal, tur dal, moongs, piyas, all come under the category of the pulses. They have a special feature which makes them to bring the nitrogen which is present in the air to get into the deeper parts of the land. When nitrogen is getting back added to the lands, it would automatically boost up the fertility levels of the land. That is the specialty of the pulses. So pulses are occasionally put in the crops to increase the fertility of the land, and then which will boost up the capacity to bring output for the land. That is the reason why pulses are most often widely brought up and used in our country. And next, that is the reason why it is also known as leguminous crop. These are the major crops in regards to the food items what we have in India. Now, we shall discuss about the crops which are non-grains but food crops. So, when you talk about the food crops, generally food means in North India we get chapati and all. In South India we get the remembrance of rice. Other than the food crops also, we have the non-grains, which means like vegetables, fruits, at the same time sugar cane, we have various other tea, coffee, all these things which we consume are called as food crops and non-grain crops. So the food non-grain crops are also produced in India. In India, the first food non-grain crop is sugar. The first food non-grain crop is sugar. For the production of the sugar, you need a hot and humid climatic condition. You need hot and humid climatic condition, and you also need the temperatures ranging from 21 to 27 degrees of Celsius, which means average hot temperatures in India, and then we also need to have some good amount of rainfall from 75 to 100 centimeters per annum. If these three conditions are not fulfilled, definitely we cannot produce any sugarcane crop. When it comes to the production of the sugarcane crop, we require more number of the manual labor to work under that, because when we are working in a sugarcane field, you need large number of people to do the sowing, and also when you are harvesting, you need large number of people, because the sugarcane crop grows very tall. For sowing you need people, for cutting also you need special people who are trained to do that one. Even though we have shortage of labor available who are skilled, but still India is producing large amount of sugarcane, and India is the second producer in the world. Then who is the first producer? The first producer is Brazil. Brazil is located in South American continent on the northern side of South America, where it is a largest countries. It is in the category of largest countries in the world, while India is the seventh largest country in the world, stands in the second place in the production of the sugarcane, where it has been a significant development technologically and also in regards to the advancement of the country. They are being a significant contributors also, because we are also exporting large amount of sugarcane to the other countries by manufacturing sugar from that one. So there is good contribution in the economy of the India also. Moving on to the next major non-food crop which is produced is oil seeds. In India, we have different kinds of oils that are being used as a medium of cooking. In India, cooking doesn't happen without oil. In India, we have the seeds of oil like groundnut. Next, we have sunflower, palm. We also have sesame, castor. So all these different types of seeds are being produced in India on a very larger scale, because groundnut production is very high in India. In regards to the people preferring to have oil, especially groundnut is the most preferred oil for cooking in India. The main cooking is done only with the oils in India. That is the reason why in India you find many people who are filled with cholesterol and all, because of this oil availability, where the fatty contents are more in the oils also. But whatever it is, India has been a significant producer of oil seeds, very largely dominating the entire world in the production of the oil seeds also. And the major production of the seeds is done on groundnut seeds, and next it is on the sunflower, but even in palm, sesame, castor, in all the seeds, India has been producing on a very larger scale. After the oil seeds, we have the next major production happening in the coffee production. Coffee production has been a typical production in the entire world. There is a special significance for the coffee seeds which are produced in Yemen, Arab states. Even Egyptian coffee also as having a special taste, special seeds are having them. But now recently they are brought into India for the production of the coffee, and in the states like Karnataka and in the states like Assam, where special climatic conditions are there, where they receive average rainfall of more than 150 to 200 centimeters per annum, is the most required condition, and they should have moderate temperature which is giving moisture for them, so that the coffee seeds will get into flourished. And this is mostly done in Baba Buha Hills, Nilgiris, in some parts of Darjeeling and the other parts, where coffee production is also been a major production activity, and India produces a significant amount of coffee which is not less in taste when compared to the Yemen's production of coffee, Arab production of coffee, or the Egyptian production of coffee. Even the Brazilian coffee seeds are also tasty. Nowadays there is a taste for Indian seeds also, which are being giving a significant contribution in the production of the coffee seeds also. So in India we have sugarcane production on a larger scale. Next we have oil seeds production in a large scale. Third, we have the coffee production in a very large scale. And moving on to the next, after coffee, the common man who always prefers to have tea. Tea is a common drink which in India has been served to many millions of people, or many crores of people would be a better advantage, because 120 crore people, maybe only a few people would be preferring to have a coffee. The highly privileged people are habituated to have coffee, whereas the lower and the middle classes people are habituated to have tea frequently in India. Even the present Prime Minister of India was once upon a time a tea vendor, which is a significant association with the tea sellers to the Prime Minister, which has turned the entire wave of the elections also. Now let's not move on to the political discussion. Now coming on to the production of tea in India, tea production requires huge amount of manual labor, which is very costly, but at the same time this production doesn't require much amount of water. The temperatures need not be very high. A moderate temperature, a moderate rainfall, showers of rains are enough to produce good tea estates, and their production would be very high in the production period. We have large tea estates also in India, in Assam. We also have tea estates in Andhra region. We also have in Tamil Nadu. We also have in Karnataka some parts like Nilgiri estates and all these things, where we have a significant tea estates contributing for the Indian economy also on a very larger scale. The only negative point what we have for the tea production is we need large amount of the human labor and their contributions to do for the production of tea to come into existence. The tea leaf has been produced in large amount in India also. And last but not the least, moving on to the other items like horticulture. Horticulture is a production of vegetables and fruits. India has been the only country which has been producing variety of fruits available in the Indian land. For example, we have certain fruits which are produced only in tropical regions, while some produced in the temperate countries. But in India we have the fruits especially like grapes, apples, apricots, peas, variety oranges, berries. So this is a combination of the tropical and the temperate climatic condition fruits, which is a very rare in some other parts of the world. India has been producing fine and the finest qualities of apples. When it comes to Jammu and Kashmir apples, these are the finest apples which are produced in the world, which has a worldwide market. So even in the production of fruits, India doesn't fall anything behind. And also in the production of vegetables also, India is able to produce large amount of onions, cauliflowers, then tomatoes, potatoes. Even these onions, cauliflowers, tomatoes and potatoes were also being exported to many corners of Southeast Asian countries which are very close to us to send our vegetables there, and onions are being the most important common vegetable used by everyone, even in North India or South India of the Indians. If a onion price goes up high, the union government steps in to regulate the onion prices. That is what the impact of onion would be in the Indians' life. Without onions, it is not an exaggeration, but without using onions, we do not have any curry which is being cooked in the Indian curries. So, onion plays a very vital role, and the next one is tomatoes are also very important in the Indian cooking system, and potatoes has been a common food with a combination of chapatis or with a combination of the rice. We have potatoes. So, it has been a very good understanding of culture. So, the horticulture production has also been giving a significant contribution for the Indian agriculture. Now, we shall have a quick recap of what are the major crops that are coming under the non-grain food crops. The non-grain food crops are, the first one is the sugar cane. India stands second in the production of sugar cane only after Brazil. For the production of sugar cane, you need hot and humid climatic condition. You need the temperatures of 21 to 27 degrees is the average temperature. You need a rainfall falling from 75 centimeters to 100 centimeters. Where if these conditions are satisfied, we also have one more need. What is that? Is large amount of manual labor who need to work in sowing the seeds of the sugar cane fields, crops, and also to do harvesting at the time of harvesting season. This has been a major problem in India, but still India is being standing in the number 2 position only after Brazil, which is located in southern part of America or South American continent. Moving on to the second major crop in India is the oil seeds. The oil seeds are produced plenty in number in India. Variety of oil seeds are produced in India. Some of them are groundnut seeds, sunflower oil, palm oil, sesame oil, castor seeds. All these seeds are being crushed to take oil, and in India there is no item which has been cooked without using oil. Oil is the only medium where Indian cooking happens. The medium of understanding Indian cooking is the oil what we use. In India, most of the people prefer to use either groundnut oil or the sunflower oil in the higher and the middle class societies. When it comes to the normal and the below middle class societies, they prefer to use the palm oil seeds oil. Next, the next major one is a common drink of all the people, coffee. Coffee is also produced extensively in India, where earlier we have a brand for the Arab coffees, Yemen coffee, or the Egyptian produced seeds of coffee. But now the same seeds are produced in India also, with the climatic conditions suitable for heavy rainfall of 150 to 200 centimeters per annum and moderate moisture climate at the Nilgiris and the Darjeeling estates or the Dehradun places, where you have a moderate and heavy showers of rain happening, which is contributing for the production of coffee. India is also producing huge amount of fine quality of coffee seeds. And moving on to the common man's drink, tea. Tea is produced extensively in India because it doesn't require heavy amount of water. It depends mainly on the rain showers then and there, or it doesn't require much amount of water. Temperatures also need not be too high or too low, moderate temperature. But the only thing what they required is heavy labor, and this has been a costly affair in the production of tea. But in India we have large tea estates in the northeastern states as well as in the southern states of India. And moving on to the horticulture. Horticulture is a combination of production of vegetables and fruits. India is the only country where we can produce tropical fruits and the temperate fruits. Some of the fruits which are produced in India are grapes, apples, apricots, peas, oranges and the berries. India has also got its own brand of market of apples. The Jammu and Kashmir apples are very famous all over the world, and we also have Kanpur oranges attracting the market from the entire world. So which shows that we have a combination or a typical combination of tropical and the temperate fruits which are grown in India. And coming to vegetables, we have a huge production places of onions, cauliflowers, tomatoes and potatoes, where onions has been a common vegetable which is used must and mandatory in all the Indian curries, and next place goes to the tomatoes and later to the potatoes. So Indians are in a good position to produce all the vegetables, fruits, tea, coffee, oil seeds, and also standing second in the production of sugarcane. So like this, India is also not only producing rice, wheat, barley, measles, coarse grains, millets, pulses. The other categories of the non-grain food is sugar cane, they are producing oil seeds, coffee, tea, vegetables, horticulture. This has been a major production aspects in India. So Indian production is not too small, they are doing a larger contribution, and Indian farmers are working very hard to fulfill the needs of their own achievement, as well as they are contributing for the development of the nation, and as well as the meet the requirements of the people of the country. As we discussed in the previous part of the lesson, what are the food crops, what are the non-food crops that we are going to discuss now. In the food crops, we have divided them into vegetables, fruits, and the regular millets, pulses, and all these things we have discussed. Now our focus would be on the non-food crops. What are the non-food crops? Non-food crops grown in India. The major non-food crops grown in India, the first one is rubber. Rubber, we all know that the tree of a rubber looks like just like the coconut tree, where the stem of the coconut tree just as like that, and from that stem you can collect the milk which is coming from the rubber tree, and when it is preserved for long days, then it can be converted into rubber. This is the normal procedure of attaining rubber. More amount of trees are found, rubber trees, in Kerala, in Meghalaya, the places where the temperature is very high. The temperature should be nearly 25 degrees Celsius should be the above temperatures, and they should receive very heavy rainfall of more than 200 centimeters per year. So naturally, being the coastal area, Kerala receives the first monsoon rains, and it also receives heavy rains. That is the reason why in most parts of Kerala we find the rubber production, and also in the regions of northeastern states where there is a possibility of heavy rains, there we have the trees of rubber plantations growing in large number. So the states like Kerala, Meghalaya, Karnataka are the main production states of rubber in our country, and India stands at the 5th place when it comes to the production of rubber in the world. So for the production of rubber, we need a temperature should be about 25 degrees of Celsius. They should receive heavy amount of rainfall, more than 200 centimeters per year. The states which produce rubber plantations are Kerala, Meghalaya, Karnataka, and in the production of rubber, India is ranked among the top 5 rubber producing countries in the world. After rubber, the most important non-food crop comes the category of fiber. The fiber is again redivided into 4 parts. The first major part is cotton. Next we have jute, and later we have natural silk and hemp. So the major fiber producing crops in India are cotton, jute, hemp and natural silks. Cotton, jute, hemp and natural silks combinedly together are known as fiber silks. Now when it comes to the production of the natural silk, where India ranks in a very high position for this, because natural silk has to be produced from silkworms. So these silkworms are actually grown on green trees or green leaves. These green leaves are mostly of mulberry tree. So mulberry tree is a tree where most of the times the green leaves are present, and on these green leaves the silkworms are grown. These silkworms are grown in order to get the natural silk. This process of attaining natural silk from the silkworms is known as sericulture. What is it known as? Sericulture. The process of attaining silkworms from the natural silk from the silkworms through growing the silkworms on the mulberry tree, which contains most of the time the green leaves, is known as sericulture, or in simple words, the growth of silkworms for the production of silk is known as sericulture. And then moving on to cotton. How will be the cotton production in India? We need high temperatures, frost free at least 210 days, and most of the states in Deccan Plateau of India are contributing for the growth of cotton, starting from Gujarat to east up to Bihar, and towards the south up to Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. So in the production of cotton, India has a very significant place in the production of cotton, because India stands in the production of cotton in the third place in the world. What are the conditions that are supporting India to achieve more production in cotton? The first one is we have high temperatures available for us in our Indian location, because we all know that Tropic of Cancer passes through the center of India, dividing India into two parts. So India is having very huge possibility of getting sun rays directly on the middle interior parts of India. So that accommodates for getting India high temperatures, which automatically results in the forced free atmospheric climatic conditions for more than 210 days. Yes, we have nearly for 6 months heavy temperatures, so accommodating up to 200 days, and later we can have good growth of cotton during this period. And most of the states which are in the central part and falling towards the southern part of India, where the influence of Himalayas is very less, there we have the high temperatures for many days in the whole along a year. So many states are able to contribute for the production of cotton. That's how India is able to attain third place in the production of cotton in the entire world. So the major production crop of India is cotton, standing in the third place. Next, coming to jute. Jute is also called as golden thread crop. Golden thread crop or golden fiber crop. Why is jute known as golden fiber crop? Jute has been used in various forms, starting from making of bags, stitching of gunny bags, making of the bags, making of the laces, making of cotton bags, everything we need threads. So threads are being contributing for the contribution of various other elements to come together, various other fibers to come together. At the same time, jute bags are produced, jute items are made world famous, because the production of jute bags is highly important of the modern day. So they are producing very huge number of jute production, and for this also we need high temperatures, we need very very high temperatures. At the same time, we need good rainfall, because most of the times this is grown on the fertile lands. So that is the reason why jute production is very high in India. In India, we have major land covering under the Indo-Gangetic plain, where the Ganga contributes through its tributaries a large portion of the land coming under the category of fertile plain. In the same way, in the Deccan Plateau, we have Godavari and Krishna deltas, as well as the Kaveri delta region, where they have made a land very very fertile land, because jute mill or jute production requires a very fertile land which can contribute internally the substance of getting water to the plants, so that the plants grow very tall and they produce the jute production for us in large number. So now let's have a brief look of what are the fiber crops that are grown in India. The natural silk, the hemp, the jute and the cotton. The most important among them are cotton, jute and natural silk. Hemp is not very so important, so we do not focus our attention towards the production of the hemp in our study now. Now moving on to the study of cotton. Cotton has been produced in India in a very large number extensively. That is the reason why the production of cotton is in the third place in India. For the production of cotton, the factors that are contributing for the production of cotton are high temperatures because of the India's strategic location, frost free days of more than 210 days, and many states from central to the south of India, where the influence of Himalayas is very less, experience or produce the cotton in a very large number, starting from Gujarat till Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka in the south, where India is ranked among the top 3 countries in the production of cotton. The second major crop grown is jute. It is also known as golden fiber or golden thread crop, because it is produced in very large number, and this production also makes India to be a very significant country in the production of jute. Then the factors which are very significant we have to remember when it comes to the production of jute is the factor of it is grown on the fertile lands. You just simply supply water through improving the irrigation facilities or laying tanks and canals. That would not help that particular land for the production of jute. The basic land itself has to be very fertile, like the Indo-Gangetic fertile plain, or the Krishna Godavari delta region, or the Kaveri delta region, where the rivers have brought the most fertile soil to that particular place and made it a very very fertile place. That's how the jute production has been in large amount, because of good rainfall and fertile lands in India. And then we have the natural silks resulting in the sericulture. The production of silk from the silkworms through the growth of green leaves which are found on the mulberry tree is known as sericulture. When literally it means that growing silkworms in order to acquire silk from the silkworms is known as sericulture. These are the 4 major types of cotton crops or the fiber crops which are grown in India, coming under the category of the non-food crops. Now we shall see the technological and the institutional reforms which were initiated in India after India got its independence. We all know that 3/4 of the entire Indian population depend highly on agriculture. That is nearly 70%. Though 70% of the Indian population truly depend mostly on agriculture, but even today, even after 6 decades after India got its independence, India achieved its republic, attitude and nation aspects, but still many of the farmers in the India, though they are from the lower background or from the middle classes, depend highly on monsoons and rainfall. Why? Because in India, though the infrastructure has been developed a lot, the canals have been improved, the water facilities have been improved, but still many of the farmers in India still depend on the rainfall and the monsoons. If the monsoons are not good of a particular year, that would definitely affect agriculture to a very large extent. If the monsoons are good, they arrive in time. That is definitely adding for the Indian agriculture. So why are the situations are like this when it comes to Indian agriculture? Because most of the farmers do not know what is technology, what are the things that have to be implemented to get advanced in technologically, what are the facilities that we can utilize, how better we can utilize the land when using the technology. This has been a drawback for India. Though in 1960s, 70s, India has witnessed a great revolution called Green Revolution, followed by White Revolution. After these revolutions have occurred, India is able to sustain her position agriculturally, because agriculture has experienced many fold times better results after the implementation of Green Revolution and White Revolution. Now we may get a fundamental question. Is this prior to Green Revolution and this White Revolution? We do not have any steps taken by the government, because nearly 70% of the Indian population depend on agriculture. Yes, the government of India first in its 5-year plans, that too in the first 5-year plan, gave importance for the development of agriculture and the agriculture related infrastructure. So Jawaharlal Nehru, the able Prime Minister of India, who was called the modern architect of modern India, has started the first 5-year plans, and in the first 5-year plan itself, he gave a special importance for the upgrading of agricultural patterns and to get technology involved in agricultural patterns. He also initiated to construct more multi-purpose dams. In the remarking of the importance of the multi-purpose dams, he made a statement saying that the modern day temples are these multi-purpose dams, because they are useful in everyone's day-to-day life, for agriculture, for electricity generation, and also to provide safe drinking water. In this way, they are multiply used in various categories. That is the reason why they are known as multi-purpose projects, and he rightly remarked them as the modern day temples of that particular century. And now even today also we have the same importance for the multi-purpose projects. So after the first 5-year plan, the focus on the agriculture made it to get expanded technologically. After this got implemented in 1960s and 70s, a step ahead from the steps taken by the government of India, we got the implementation of Green Revolution and White Revolution, which increased the production of the crop on a very larger scale. And after this, we also got the steps like crop insurance for any natural disaster like droughts, floods, fire, cyclones. This created the awareness for the people for the establishment of the institutions who will work better for the people to understand what is actually happening. And government has also initiated to give the Kisan credit cards and personal accidental insurance coverage for the farmers. So government is trying its level best in order to improve the standard of agriculture in India, because most of the people in India depend on agriculture. Many countries have developed, though they are agricultural countries, example like Russia, but we have some deadlock which is not allowing the agricultural people to develop on a larger scale. Though government has initiated these 5-year plans, government has initiated the Green Revolution, White Revolution, we have attained better when compared to the worst results. But still, we need to achieve on a very larger scale. So the policies of implementation of the crop insurance plans or the Kisan credit card system or the personal accident insurance coverage for the farmers also added the benefits for the people to contribute towards the agriculture. But still, there are many milestones to go, because in most of the places the middlemen takes the maximum share of production, because the money lenders, banks do not provide loans for the farmers prior to this 1990s. So before this, many of the farmers who are the middle class families or the lower middle class families used to approach the money lenders. These money lenders used to give them for heavy interests and force them to work for very less wages in their fields. This will automatically result for them to sell their crop only to the middleman. In turn, middleman will tell it to the market at his fixed prices. So the real farmer is not getting more benefits. Only the middleman, the brokerage person who acts as a medium between the market and the farmer, is getting larger share without doing any hard work. So that's how the middleman has to be eliminated. The spectacular middlemen or the spectatorship show of the farmer has to be ended. So government has started to give loans through banks, personally established bank, rural banks, special Grameen banks are being established, cooperative societies have been established in order to further strengthen the farmers and then to eliminate the money lenders, so that the money lenders would not squeeze the blood of the farmers. And they also implemented many land acquisition bills in order to eliminate the land holding for the large number of hectares of land under the hands of zamindars. And in this way, government has been trying its level best to eliminate all the evils which are being deadlocks for the implementation of the institutional as well as the technological reforms in the country in regards to agriculture, where it has been a major dominant occupation of the people of India even today. Now, moving on to understand the contribution of agriculture to the Indian economy. When we talk about the contribution of agriculture to the Indian economy, the immediate point what comes to our mind is economy is contributing to the Indian GDP. The GDP, when we take in statistics from 1951 to 2001, the contribution of agriculture has been declining day by day. Though it has been declining day by day, it has been the main industry which has been providing occupation for nearly 63% of people in the country. And these 63% of people are getting employment and their daily livelihood needs are fulfilled. So now the point which is very, very important for us to understand is that if the contribution of the agriculture is declining day to day, we need to address the issue seriously, because in a country where more than 100 billion people stay and most of them are employed in the field of agriculture, and these people who are employed in the agriculture are not able to satisfy their daily requirements, this decline of the income which is getting from the agriculture or the decline of the attitude of the income sources which are coming down would definitely show its result in the other spheres. For example, if a family member of a farmer gets his income declined year by year, that would definitely show its impact on the other parts of the society. It results in the decline of the health of the family members. He may not afford to make his children to study in a very good school. Then it decreases in the standard of education which is being imparted to the children of the farmer. So like this, every aspect of farmer is being having direct link with the other spheres of the society. It is very, very important for us to understand that in a society where there is a possibility of declining of the income in agriculture, the government has to take serious steps in order to arrest the decline and to upgrade the income in the agriculture, because it will show its impact directly on the day-to-day life of the people and also on a larger scale in the society. So in order to improve the standard of the people and to add on to benefits for the farmers, Government of India has initiated the Indian Central Agricultural Research Institute to study about the agricultural patterns in India. What are the basic crops? How to improve the crop facilities? What are the basic problems? Where are we lagging? What are the possible solutions for this one? This all will be studied by the agricultural universities which are set up all over India. Then they also want to have an side income for the farmers, because even though if agriculture of that particular period or the cropping of that particular year fails also, many of the farmers nowadays we are listening are committing suicides. This should not be happening, because though crop may fail because climate is not in our hands or whether we cannot control that. It depends on the situation. The rainfall cannot be brought in or dragged in. It is by nature that has to come. So we need to have an alternative source of income to boost up the morale of the farmer. So they started to study about the animal breeding for the cattle crop, which can be a substitute for them and also helping them in the farming. And many veterinary sciences institutes are open to study about the animals and to give treatment for the animals. And the horticulture developments, what are the other forms of developments, like not only crops, fruit crops, then sericulture, then flower cropping, all these things also would add and benefit the farmers on a very larger scale. And research on the climate, how do we know about the rains, what are the possibility of guesses of rains, what are the factors that are changing the rain patterns or the monsoon patterns over Indian farming, all these things, these all are being the government steps initiated to study about the agriculture, to study about the animal breeding, to know about the better facilities medicinal to the animals through veterinary sciences, to have other cultural patterns of horticulture in the agriculture, to do researches on climate and weather of a nation, to know it better. And nowadays the most big challenge what the Indian farmers are facing is the stiff competition. Climate was a big problem, low income, and also now they have an international competition. They have competition from neighboring countries like China, Japan, and all the other countries who can produce rice will definitely be in competition with India. Who can produce jute are coming in competition, because today world has become a global village. Everybody is moving from one corner to other corner in search of employment, and the same way the products are also being exported and imported from one corner to another corner. So we are getting global stiff competition from the other nations also. So let's have a brief idea of what is the contribution of agriculture to the Indian economy. Indian economy has been greatly deriving its contributions, because from 1951 to 2001, the only industry which is providing large employment for nearly 63% of people are getting employed and receiving their livelihood in the Indian agriculture industry. The decline in the agriculture industry's income would definitely result in the other spheres of life that would start to affect the other parts of the society in our country. So the government, in an immediate step of reaction, started to establish Indian Cultural Agricultural Research Institutes or universities, and also research places on animal breeding and veterinary sciences hospitals to study about the animal health, horticulture development system patterns to study about them, researches on the climate and the weather of a country, and also they have made a brief analysis and start to conduct live programs in televisions and on the radio to make the farmers to understand what are the necessary steps to take when there is any threat. If they have any particular disease coming to a crop, what is the possible solution, whom to approach. Now they have brought a toll-free number for the entire country where every farmer can call to that number and to register his complaint. So the experts would definitely deliver a possible solution for him, so that he would get a perfect scientific advice, so that he can trust on them and move ahead, because most of the farmers are uneducated people in our country. But still we have a international competition, because today world is a global village where we experience the stiff international competition or global competition. Food security. The food security has been an important aspect nowadays in the modern India. We have seen the government of India has brought the food security bill. What is the purpose or the need for a government to assure food secure to all its people in India? What is the necessity or what is the situations? In order to understand the answer to this one, let us see here. In a country where most of the people must have the access to get their food with at least minimum nutritional levels of the subsidy which they are getting. The food what they are taking should supplement their body to get them the minimum nutritional levels so that they can live healthily and happily, so that they can work and they can contribute for themselves and for the nation. So they all need minimum nutritional levels of energy required for them. They get it with the nutrients what they are taking as a supplement in the form of food. When most of the people in India, if you study, nearly 60% of the below poverty line people who are coming under the category of the lower middle class communities are not getting the sufficient amount of nutritious foods. Many people do not take a meal for more than 2 days. Very rarely they get a full day meal. Some people are completely because of the poverty which is existing in the country. So, lack of food results to low nutritional level of food or lack of nutritional levels of food. The third one, which is the main reason for this, is poverty. Due to poverty, many people in India are not able to take their food supplements which are getting at least the minimum levels of the nutritional requirements which are required for them to have or to lead their life healthily. Next, this can also happen not only for the poor categories of people but also to rich community people also when their regions are being prone or affected by natural disasters. For example, we have seen the 2014, the cyclone of Hudhud which affected the city of Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, where many people, many lakhs of people lost their houses, lost contact with their friends, relatives and enemy, and the transport system was completely jugged off, and which resulted in for them the scarcity of the basic necessities like food, water and shelter. So it is not only that the lower middle class community may be affecting or getting affected with the food insecure situation. Sometimes any category of people because of the natural disasters may be coming into the fall of food insecure situation. So the government decided to have a national food security bill. With this national food security bill, the government assures a minimum levels of nutrition level of food to the common man at an affordable price. This is again redivided into two categories. One is the buffer stock. The buffer stock is a stock which is maintained by the union government in order to have the surplus extra amount. Buffer means extra. The extra amount of the food like rice, wheat, pulses, millets are being stored by the union government at the FCI in order to face the situations when any natural disaster comes or when any unprovoked situations come and where they need to give food for the people during the times of emergency, then they use the buffer stock. Buffer stock can also be used when there is a shortage of the resources of the food or millet or pulses in the regular distribution done by the government. And the second category is public distribution system. Public distribution system is popularly known as PDS. The PDS is a system where the government has set up the system in order to distribute the rice, the dal, the pulses, the millets at the minimum cost or the affordable cost of the common man by buying them, giving the crop the minimum support price. The government announces to the farmers a certain amount of price so that nobody in the market would cheat them by selling them at very less cost, so they can go for the minimum support price given by the government, and government only will buy through the Food Corporation of India the particular crop from the farmer directly, so that they would not have any middleman interfering in the middle and taking the extra benefits from them. And they also provide for the farmers the subsidies on the fertilizers, on the pesticides, on the seeds, so that they can grow their crop happily without any economic burden. After collecting the crop, announcing the middle support price or minimum support price, and collection by the FCI maintains a record of all the collection and everything, and parallelly maintains a buffer stock in order to meet the emergency requirements of the country. And this, through the public distribution system, will be sent to the common man. The people are again further categorized basing on their incomes into the above poverty line and the below poverty line. The people those are coming under the below poverty line would be issued a particular card known as a ration card. That card, when it is being displayed at the public distribution shop, then they would definitely get the government issued rice, dal, millet, pulses and everything for them at very less cost, where the other cost would be borne by the government, and this would be given to the common man so that they can fulfill their basic requirements with the minimum nutritional levels. That is a basic requirement or the basic ideology of the government in implementing the food security bill. Though government has planned many steps and created many kind of institutions to support the farmer by establishing FCI, by announcing the minimum support price and also giving subsidies on the fertilizers and all, still farmers spend more money on the seeds and they are forced to take money from the money lenders. And one more thing which added for the land degradation, because farmers are being assured to get free power in some of the states. When the farmers are given free power, the farmers have triggered to go for digging their own bore wells and dragged more amount of water from the underground layers of the water land and brought it to the cultivation of the crop, as it happened for many long years, for a decade. That resulted in the underground layers of the water getting evaporated, resulting in the production of the crop and land completely getting degraded. Like this, there are many unseen sides of the farmers who are facing many problems, though they are getting many benefits from the government, but still there is a lot that has to be done to benefit the farmers as well as to benefit the larger community of people. Government is trying its level best to get the larger scale benefits. Now let us see what is the impact of globalization on our Indian agriculture. Now moving on to understand what is the impact of globalization on the Indian agriculture specifically. We all know that impact of globalization is not new for Indian agriculture, because prior to India got its freedom, even if you can go tracing back to the medieval period or the ancient period, we have a trade relations between India and the West. But during that time, we do not have much competition, which is pressurizing the Indians to do or to face the effects of globalization. Maybe the name may not be branded during that period, but later, after the arrival of the Britishers, they forced the Indian farmers to produce what is required for them, and they used to import it to their homeland. For example, let us take raw cotton. Raw cotton is being forced by the Indian farmers to produce, and the production of the raw cotton should be very high, because in India you get very high quality of raw cotton that is being exported to Manchester in London, and afterwards again it is rebrought back, the finished products, and sold in the Indian market. So the impact of globalization started to show its effect on India after the period of colonization. Not only this, we have another incident in Champaran at Bihar, where in 1917 they were forced to produce indigo, giving up their regular food crops, because most of the other parts of India produce cotton, and for the textile industries during that period they need the indigo crop to color their particular textiles. So they forced the farmers in 1917 in Bihar, the district called Champaran, forced to produce the indigo crop. So like this, it has been a process where the Britishers started to give us the flavor of globalization, but not so much, though Indian farmers have lost most of their benefits, they face stiff competition from them. But from 1990s onwards, they started to experience a new and difficult challenges from the developed countries. Though India has been producing rice, cotton, sugar, everything in large number, but still we are lagging behind in the subsidiary competition of the developed countries, because their production is produced in larger and larger scale when compared to India's production. Though Green Revolution in late 1960s and 70s have given up a good boom for the agriculture and proved to be very positive trends in the production, but still there are many negative implications because of Green Revolution. Some of them are resulting in the land degradation because of the over usage of the underground levels of the water and more utilization of the pesticides and chemicals in order to improve the production of the crop, and also this is resulting in the vanishing of the biodiversity of the country. And then the Jenny Revolution is a modern day appeal. Green Revolution has not only brought some positive boom for the agriculture, but also brought a different shape for the agriculture, resulting in the land degradation, chemicalization of the land, and also getting us into more troubles by getting more and more chemicals added to this, resulting in the biodiversity disappearance. But now the modern day period our calling is Jenny diversity or Jenny Revolution. Jenny engineering is mean focused to develop a new and a competent seeds which can sustain all these kind of situations and give us a better output or good production amount. So Jenny Revolution or Jenny engineering has been a call in order to upgrade the seeds with the new potentials so that they can produce more and give more and more output to the farmers in the developing as well as the developed countries. And moving on to the another possible solutions where many of the environmentalists are suggesting is the organic farming. In the organic farming, they do not use any kind of pesticides or chemicals in order to boost up the production. They follow the natural procedure and use the natural manures which are produced from plants and trees, fruits and the biodegradable items, and produce the production with a healthy manner that results in the organic farming. Nowadays in many countries they have started to implement the organic farming. This is not only a positive for the people those who consume the organic products, but also for the people, like the economic degradation do not happen, environmental degradation do not happen, any land would not get degraded or filled with chemicals though they do agriculture, because here literally they don't use any chemicals. And later the most environmentalists suggest for the Indian farmers is that though Indians are been producing in large number, Indians have to sustain themselves to go for the versatile cropping, because most of the population of India, nearly 600 million population of India, depend on 250 million hectares of land, where most of the families do not have more than half hectare of land under their name or under their control. So they need to go for the different aspect or different style. Then only the Indian farmers can sustain and achieve the positive results. What is the solution that is given by the environmentalists to the Indians? Let us see here. Indian farmers should go for the diverse crop. Go for a crop which can give you the high value in the production of the crop, and at the same time which should have to boost up your income on a very large scale, and also it should suggest you or to bring the reducing the degradation of the land. Is it possible to have a crop which is having high value, which increases our income and which do not create any land degradation? Yes, we have certain crops like fruits, medicinal herbs, which are very rarely grown in other parts of the world because of India's diverse climatic conditions. There is a possibility to grow variety of crops in India, resulting in the growth of fruits, medicinal herbs and all these things. So with the possibility of India's wide range of climatic conditions, we also have the possibility of growing wide variety of crops. So it is better advisable for all the Indian farmers to go for high variety crops which will produce for us a high value of input. At the same time, they would boost the income of the farmers and which would add for the benefit of the farmers of the Indians. This is the suggestion given by the well-known environmentalists of this century in order to have better result and a better lifestyle for the Indian farmers, because we have seen a steady decline from 1951 to 2001 in the contribution towards GDP, and many millions of people are literally depending on the Indian agriculture. So it is must and mandatory for all of us to contribute for the development of the Indian agriculture, so that the impact should not fall on the other spheres and the other sectors of the country. So in this lesson, we have discussed about the different agricultural patterns, the cropping patterns, the food crops, the non-food crops, and all these aspects we have covered in order to understand how the impact of globalization has been on the Indian agriculture.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.